Hello Wednesday Wanderers, it's Ranger Erin again, and today's wonder is who is John Floyd? So you may have realized that our creek is called Floyd's Fork, and it was named after James John Floyd. And he lived during a time before the United States of America was a country, and before Louisville was a city, and before Kentucky was a state. And during his life, the United States of America became a country and Louisville became a city, but he never actually saw Kentucky become a state. So the reason that this river, this creek, was named after John Floyd's is that he was one of the men who was surveying this area for settlers to move into. So in 1774, John Floyd led an expedition, that's kind of like an adventure, into unknown lands to them. And there was 7 men, and they came to the Falls of the Ohio and the surrounding areas, which we call Louisville now. And during this trip, what they were looking for was different ways to get in. Most of that travel happened by water, so waterways were very important to them. But they also were in charge of making trails and roads that horses and carriages could move across. Another thing that they did is when he was a surveyor, he would be looking for natural resources. So he would be looking for things that settlers could use when they moved into this area. So they would be looking for timber that they could cut down to make their log cabins. They would be looking for good land that could be farmable. And then they would also look for other natural resources like salt licks that they could use for cooking. When settlers started to move into that area, he also kind of acted as the judge over land disputes. So he was the one that decided this is your land and that's your land over there, and this is the boundary in between them. And one of the last things that he did is that he attacked and he defended us against attacks from the local Native American population, the Shawnee, that had the original claim to the land. It was during this 2-year period that John Floyd was surveying this area that some of his men discovered this creek, and they named it after him. They named it the Floyds River, and that name later changed to Floyd's Fork. He only spent about 2 years surveying, and then after that, he led quite an exciting life. He went and became a privateer, which is just kind of a fancy name for a pirate at the time. So this was during the Revolutionary War, where the enemy was England. So the U.S., that wasn't really the U.S. yet, was in a fight with England for their freedom. And he became a privateer, which again, that's like a pirate, and he would attack English ships that were bringing resources to those English fighters. So he would attack and steal all of the goods on those ships. He was actually captured after about a year of this and taken back to England, and then he escaped, and with the help of Benjamin Franklin, he made his way back to the Americas. Once back in the Americas, he returned to Kentucky, which again at that time was not called Kentucky. So he had settled a little plot of land for himself when he was surveying years before. And he took his family to that area and started to live there almost like a retirement plan, but he definitely wasn't retired. So when he first moved back and he settled that land, he was acting as sort of the leader of a militia that again was attacking those Native Americans and trying to drive them out of this area. John Floyd was one of Kentucky's first 2 judges. This was even before Kentucky was a state. He was one of the first 2 judges, and he didn't actually get to enjoy that for very long. About 1 year after he was named a judge, he was shot and killed by Native Americans, fairly close to Floyd's Fork. He was only 33 years old when he died, and he was well known in his time, as well known as Daniel Boone and George Washington and lots of other surveyors just like him. But his name is forever going to be remembered by this river here, Floyd's Fork, as well as Floyd County. I've just told you the story of John Floyd's life, and the story of somebody's life is called a biography, and that's going to be our first activity. So I want you to interview somebody in your family, and I want you to write their biography. But you can do it as a comic. So I made a comic of Ranger Russell's life, his biography. It starts out with where he was born and how he was born, hatching out of a shell, how big events in his life. He lived his first part of his life as a wild turtle, important things like when he was hurt, and then where he's at now, teaching the world about what it is to be a turtle and all about nature. The second activity that you might choose to do is to act as an explorer yourself. I want you to choose a trail or maybe a field that you've never visited before, but I don't want you to look at a map first. Go with an adult, and you can even maybe decide to go off trail, but be careful of poison ivy, poison hemlock, and ticks. And I want you to just discover that area, and I want you to think about, what could I use those trees for? Where would I find food? Where might I build a road or put a house? And different things like that. So acting like an explorer, once you get finished with that and you head home without ever looking at a map of that trail that you walked on, I want you to try and draw it yourself from memory and see how well you do. Take a look at a map at that point and compare and see how difficult it really is to be a surveyor. Our last activity, your third activity, I want you to research a name in your area. So just like Floyd's Fork, a lot of the streets, lakes, rivers, counties, they're all named after historical figures. So I want you to pick out a name in your area, and I want you to figure out, why was it named that? Who is that person that it's named after? What event is it named after? Or what story does that have to tell? And if you want, you can send me those comments, send me those pictures, send me what you find out. I would love to hear the different stories that you found out from areas around you.